questions.
That's good. I like questions.
Okay, we're recording now, so we can continue however we want to continue.
What's your question?
Oh, well, several, but I really I really do like gemstones in general. And so I do know a fair amount about the properties. So I was very interested in what you're talking about with mala, the differences between different mala beads and what they do. So do you have some resource that talks about that?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple of texts that are very well researched, and I'll show you the slide on them. Probably one of the best is this one here. It's called Mantra Yoga and Primal Sound, Secrets of Seed or Bija Mantra. And I'll make the link available and show you the image so that it's more clear in a second. But there are several that go through and give the specifics on. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part. Okay. Well, I will make that available and just, make a list of it. And there's, I have a table. I don't think I put it in this, but I do have a table that I created for another talk that talks about each one of the different type of mala and what they're useful for and how they're used for healing. And some use gemstones, and the better the stone, generally the better. The pearl is used a lot of time, like you have. More common mantra or malas are the sandalwood, and I like those in particular, like the one I'm holding in my hand, because they have the strong aroma of the sandalwood itself, which is if you're into aromatherapy or into the sense of smell, it can trigger a lot of things just smelling that. And and then the Rudraksha seeds are the ones that are used in that. The smaller ones, like this is an 8 millimeter, kind of the smaller bead. There are larger size, and then there's a whole, as I said, I had a whole book on those that describe for different ailments or different problems. It can be very good for healing the body. And like Connie, your initial question about putting it over a chakra or center, it can be useful, and it can store the energy and could be protective in that sense. But as a rule, if you're challenged, with any type of emotion that's in excess, like anxiety or stress or fear or things like that, it's probably better, to continue to use the mala and to chant the mantra. And often when you do the mantra, the most powerful versions are done in the mind. But if you don't know the mantra, one of the best ways to learn it is to chant it out loud, using audible speech, because that uses it intones the sounds from Sanskrit that actually does the healing effect on the body. And the more it's done, usually the more powerful it becomes. But if you are in need of critical care, call 911, go to the emergency room. It's mantra is typically too slow unless you have somebody that has really mastered a particular type or level of performance with the mantra.
So the mantra might not be very useful if you're wanting to change like the frequency of the different petals, whatever they might be, maybe, twisted, like Audley used to say, that the petals sometimes get distorted. And so if you want to bring them back into a resonance that is in harmony with their highest capacity, then a mantra might or might not be good for that.
It would be ideal for it because, for one thing, you can do it all the time. And I know people sometimes tell me they don't have time, or that maybe they don't have the interest, or they don't, they're not attracted to it, but they have some mantra. Like I found that everybody has some thought pattern they go over and over in their mind with.
Right.
And it may be like, oh, I'm not very attractive, or people don't like me, or we have all these things, and those are in a sense mantra, and they do increase, do impact our emotional state and our emotional well-being.
And they
And-
shape the petals of our, I would imagine to some extent, they affect the resonance of those
Yeah.
petals.
Right. And so, if you continue to do the old mantra, it just continues and maybe even accelerates the distortion of that petal or the damage in that chakra. If you take a new mantra and some of the healing mantras and you begin to work with those and you simply do them as often as you can. And like, I like to take advantage of all the time. My consciousness is running nonstop. Even when I lay down to go to sleep or I meditate or whatever, things come in my mind. So I do my mantra. When I'm driving, I typically either am listening to a book or doing a mantra. And and in California, we have lots of traffic, so you get lots of opportunities to do mantra. And I had a friend tell me recently they're said the traffic in Oklahoma City is becoming a mess. And, and I noticed that last time I was back there, it's just like I actually had to stop in traffic a few times on the freeway. I thought this is perfect for mantra, but you're going to do it and you can play them on the phone or the car, radio and do that, and plenty of stuff available. Does that make sense? Any
Yes,
more
yes.
questions?
So the Sanskrit, what you were talking about with Sanskrit and its effect on you,
Yes.
that is, I mean, from an old, I'm definitely into the sound aspect of meditation. It's always been very appealing to me. And that's always the way I felt when we would go and be chanting, that it wasn't really like you were chanting, it was more like the music was chanting you, if that makes any sense.
That tends to be what happens after you do it more and more, and you've kind of integrated into your consciousness and into your brain. You can sit there and the mantra simply does itself. And that's one of the beauties, like of a teacher like Audley. And there's a few gurus that I've met or teachers that I've met, when they give you a mantra like he did at the initiation, it's implanted in such a way that it doesn't stop, and it's just like if you water it and feed it, it just continues to grow. And anytime I sit still, that mantra comes in my mind. Anytime I lie down to go to sleep or I meditate, that mantra's in my mind. If I pick up the mala and start, moving the beads, that mantra comes into my mind. And there's a term in Sanskrit, and I was trying to look that up. I have it written down somewhere. It's kind of a long term, but it's actually a property of the sound that's invested in you at the initiation. And I think in many sense, it's probably more important from my perspective that the mantra that you're given at the initiation is much more important than the light that's imparted. And that's what takes you on. And Audley often talked about, following the sound to the source, and continuing to work with that. And one of the interesting things in preparing for this lecture, I found a really interesting thing that said the sound is really the primal nature of consciousness, much more than light. And often in the spiritual tradition, we talk about the light being the what we're trying to do is get into the light. We talk about enlightenment. We don't talk about ensoundment, or whatever would be the appropriate word there. But when you go back and look at the scriptures in nearly every tradition, it's very clear that the sound comes before the light. And even in the Christian tradition, I think it's most beautifully stated in the Bible. It talks about when the word is spoken, God said, "Let there be light." He didn't say, "I'm a big light and let there be sound." And so it's a way that as the energy comes out and expresses through consciousness and form, the sound is the primal source of it. And that's why the path that Dr. Thin, shared with us and shared with Audley was the path of the Holy Nam, the sound current. And that's where without the sound, you simply don't make it. You deceive yourself. And as I've often said, you know, the problem with light is any good magician can create very bright white light and can easily deceive or delude, you know, those around. And I often was amazed when I saw the Star Wars movie and here the main Sith Lord, you know, is running the universe, but he's having the Jedi over every day, who are the ones that have the great sight and the great awareness and all that. But because of how he presents himself, you know, they don't see it. Finally, in the end, you know, Yoda begins to think something's not right about this. Uh, but you know, it's fascinating to study it and understand it. Does that make sense?
Yes, you want to start your
Odd-
lecture now?
Oddly used to say that
Yeah,
that the light protects you and the sound takes you home.
that's correct. And I thought I was started. I thought when I put up the slide, you were going to turn it on, but you know,
No, we're recording. I just was wondering if this is going to take a different format, like it'll be a Q&A the whole time, or are you going to?
Maybe it's when we're talking about mantra and stuff, some of the things I'll go into, and I've got slides that'll cover, but others, you know, I think being interactive, it maybe allows it to flow a little more easily.
Yeah, I like it. I like the process. I just wanted to touch base with you on it.
Yeah, no, it's good. Thanks for clarifying. But I'll move forward. And I was going to do the meditation, but I think I've gone past that. So we'll focus on that. And I like to start off with the you know, the states of consciousness and that's waking up, and then the stages of consciousness, the growing up. Kind of keep that in mind, and then the states of consciousness. Make sure people are aware: waking consciousness, gross realm, dream consciousness, subtle realm, deep sleep, no dreams. That's the causal manifestation. And then as you get into the fourth state, you begin to be aware that even when you're in deep sleep, you're still aware that there is a witness, or there's a part of your consciousness that's non-dual, that's a pure manifestation of consciousness. And then if you get into the fifth state, oneness with everything, where the witness sees the whole of creation. And with that as a base, again, we're talking about a lot of stuff that you know, personally I've experienced, but also I like to reference different material to give people different perspectives. But seek truth in meditation, not in the moldy books. Look into the sky to see the moon, not the pond.
Hey,
And,
Ben,
yes.
do you think do you think it would work kind of as a hybrid to have people ask questions while you're lecturing? Like if something comes up and they want to ask a question at that time, to do that, or would you rather not?
Yeah, that's fine for this one in particular. Some are just more informational,
Okay.
and probably, you know, it breaks the flow of the information and the structure of it. But this one is much more free form. But you know, there's a lot of information in there too. But I think if people ask questions as we go, you know, I'm fine with that. It works with no problem. It's a
Okay,
smaller group, so we can make it happen.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Yeah, very good. Okay, and this one I found was particularly insightful for me, you know, and I continue to explore like the inner realms, or the subtle realms in particular. And like I've talked a lot in the previous lectures about, well, what do you see when you're in the subtle realms? And you know, we talked about things like, well, you don't see objects in the subtle realm. Like when you're in a dream, there's whatever's chasing you is there, but there's not rocks, and there's not trees and chairs and all that stuff around for the most part. I mean, there are differences in that, but they're there. But when we look at it from the yogic perspective, and this is work done by the book that I showed previously, Mantra Yoga by David Frawley. And he summarized this, and he's spent a lot of time in India and studied with these people, actually lives in Santa Fe now, and has produced some brilliant books on, and is well recognized in India as well as the US, and he's PhD and all that sort of stuff. But truly a scholar. But he looks at the 4 levels of speech that we find in yogic thought. And there's a misspelled word. But the first level is audible speech, Vikarya, and it's produced through the throat. We speak, and it's generally done in the waking state. And then the Madhyama, the pranic speech, is done from the heart, and it's the sound that you hear in dreams. And that's the thing that I noticed in most of the subtle realm. And as I've gone through preparing these lectures and really examined myself in those levels, examined the images of Audley in those levels that I see, or other beings, I find that there's very little speech. I find that there's in most cases there's none. It's just like I see the image or the being, Babaji, Audley, any of the other beings, and I will know what's going on, and I will be aware of it. But it comes as a knowing, not as a sound in the same way. And then the Pashyanti, the illumined speech, actually is associated with the navel or the chakra, and it comes in deep sleep. And then the para is the transcendent, the turiya, the fourth state, the witness, the root center. It comes in the samadhi state, but that is that level of speech is unfolds when you actually move into that. And there's one section of the text that I thought would probably be useful. Maybe I should have put it on a slide, but I thought it might be useful just to read through it. And it's just a couple of paragraphs here, but the Vaikarya refers to the coarse or literal level of speech. It is the word as spoken with the vocal organs in the mouth and the throat. Our minds usually dwell on the levels of audible speech and with the conventional meaning of words. This is the level of speech as related to the outer sensation, which relates to physical reality. At this level, the outer form of the word is the main thing. The effect, to affect this level of speech, we must audibly repeat the mantra. And that's why doing the mantra, and learning the Sanskrit terms, and like one mantra I particularly have worked a great deal with is the Gayatri mantra. And after doing it for a long period of time, it began to, I could tell even my own voice was changing. And it has an effect on the mind in lots of different and interesting ways. But then if we enter the Madhyama, which literally means the middle level of speech, when we think or feel deeply about something, when we ponder or wonder about things, and this requires that our life force and vitality is engaged in what we say. Most artistic thinking comes from this level, which reveals subtle forms and inner energy patterns. This is the astral form of speech connected to the dream world. All mantras can be employed at this level when we repeat them along with the breath. And then the Pashanti, or perceptive speech, occurs when we perceive the underlying cosmic truths or archetypes, the dharma behind any object or situation. Its nature is light or revelation, showing the seed forces at work in the universe. This is the causal level of speech related to the deep sleep state. To reach this level in the awakening state requires deep meditation or as an act of grace. It corresponds to the one-pointed mind in yoga. It has a luminous quality to it. The word at this level has the light and reveals the truth. Many mantric prayers and hymns are best understood at this level, which engages our deeper contemplative nature. And then the para, which means transcendent, is the level of pure silence in which meaning is so full and complete that it cannot be broken down into limited words. It is the level of pure consciousness, the divine word of silence, of I am all, and the great realization of the Vedanta. This is the transcendent level of speech which leads beyond any particular expression or utterance. It corresponds to the nirodha, or the merged condition of the mind, the state of samadhi in yoga practice. The higher self, or paramitram, has its own natural language, which reverberates in silence. Its basic seed ideas are revealed in the great insight of the Vedanta, which is the Brahmanic level, or I am the divine self. This speech of the self is the highest or supreme stage of speech, paravaka. It contains of such realization, not mere thoughts, but concretely felt understanding as I am all is one, the self is the entire universe, or the expression of the breath as I, prana is the I am I, as the project, the sense of the individual life. Our sense of self is rooted in speech, which in turn is based on the divine word. And I know that's probably a little much to ingest, but it does help to understand why, as we begin to meditate and as we begin to practice, and especially as you do mantra repeatedly, you will come to a point where revealed knowledge or knowledge of the higher self, like when someone speaks about it or tells you about it, explains what's going on in your area, your level of consciousness. When they do that, you say, oh, wow, that's true. I agree. You know, it's just like it comes with an inner knowing when you hear speech at that level. And that's why when you sit in the presence of Audley or a teacher of that level, when they speak, it's like he's speaking directly to your heart, but you're hearing it in a much different way. And you know, the deeper or the greater the awareness, like you feel it with your whole body. You know, when the truth is known, you know it with great conviction. And the associated with that also is as you touch that divine part of yourself, the knowing that you come back with and the realization or revelation of information, it comes with a great deal of certainty and complete knowing, like you don't doubt that you've had that experience that occurred in your time with Audley, or in your time of initiation, or in your time of enlightenment, in the dreams where you saw him and you interacted with him. So it becomes a very interesting perspective to look at it. And the bija mantras or seed mantras, all of those break down into very specific levels, and there's different ones for different things and associated with different levels. Any questions on that before I go to the next? Good. Everybody got it. We're making progress. Okay, the chanting through the chakras. Now this comes from a book called Kriya Yoga, Continuing the Lineage of Enlightenment by Ryan Kruzak. And Ryan is one of Roy Davis's students. He has a yoga center in Asheville, North Carolina, and is really quite a phenomenal teacher from my perspective. And he's more of a scholar than most of the students, I would say, in the Kriya tradition. He's written a number of books, and he's also an Ayurvedic doctor, a Jyotish astrologer, and has a site. He used to do readings and stuff on the site, but he has 2 or 3 other people that he usually refers you to now. But he talks about these things and chanting through the chakras. This is one of the exercises that's frequently done in the Kriya traditions. And you can see the chakras, or the listed there on the left-hand column: the root, sacred, sacrum, navel, heart, throat, third eye, and crown. The location, and there's differences I found in different sources, but this is good enough to work with. But the seed sounds are pretty common, and there's 2 or 3 different versions of seed sounds that are used for different chakras. But this one in particular I found it brings peace and it calms the mind. But it gives you simply a little meditation technique or posture, sitting in your normal posture, upright. Bring your attention to the base of the spine and your first chakra, and hold it there for a few breaths, and then chant the mantra like lum, 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 lum. And as you chant, holding your consciousness in a particular center, you will find that it becomes a pleasant feeling in general. Or if there's fear that comes from it, then there's issues in that center that you work. If you don't have any issues tied to that center so much, and you go through the sound, it becomes a little easier and more energizing. Where if there's actually issues associated with it, it may cause anxiety. And so it just says that's an area where you want to work, and you do it. But again, the more you do these in a particular chakra or center, the more powerful they become. And I found that there's several people, and I'm not sure in fact, I'd be interested to get people's feedback on that. There seemed to be a general state of awareness for many of the people that the students that were there when I was with Audley, that there's certain chakra levels that you don't go into. Those are taboo areas. You only have problems there, and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of fascinating. But it's like it's denying a part of yourself, and that's where I thought the little video that Connie shared yesterday about the firebender, in particular, it talked about the guru or the teacher in that case talked about the problems that occur in each chakra. And like the root chakra, it's all, if there's fear of any kind in your life, there's separateness. And if you're afraid that you're going to fail, you're afraid that nobody's going to like you, that you're not worthy, all of those sense of shame, guilt, and that are all tied up in those lower chakras. And so if you don't work through that energy and resolve those, it simply can turn into even a greater problem. One of the problems is you get greater awareness in the higher levels. And if those levels, if the energy is not flowing properly through them, it often manifests in strange ways, or sometimes hurtful ways to others, or sometimes it will actually magnify issues like greed, fear, and intensity, aggressiveness to others, things like that. So it's good to find balance in the whole kingdom. So going through any of these exercises, and the Kriya is a perfect way to do it. This is actually something, these sounds are sounds that help to heal the centers and help to bring them back into balance. And so if you have fear in a center, one way to help deal with that is to simply focus at that level and chant the mantra that's associated with that. And these are all seed level sounds. There many mantras have words that are multiple syllables, but they're all based on basic seed levels of sound. And as the sound flows out of the supreme, or out of the divine self, it expresses as a different sound associated with each level. Like we're all pretty much familiar with the sounds that Audley talked about, like at the root chakra. Night sounds is the most common one that I hear. It's like going out into nature at night and you're hearing frogs in the pond and crickets and all sorts of things that occur in the night. And as you move up, you hear sounds like flutes, like night birds, like the whippoorwill, things like that. And as you move up through the centers, as the energy flows through those centers and you become aware of that subtle awareness, then you hear the sound associated with that. And still my favorite, and the one I hear most strongly, is the one tied to the heart. And it's the tinkle bells, a beautiful, for me, very comforting first sound I ever heard when I sat with Audley, and he said, okay, this is how you meditate. And I did that, and I was just overwhelmed by how beautiful it was, and how it drew me to it in such a way that it helped me to understand that the teaching is real. I could I could feel the energy flowing through my body. I could hear the sound that's expressing as it flows through that. And a lot of the instruments and the mantras themselves, as they're tied to these different centers, the sound is made by a lot of instruments to try to reproduce that sound that's heard in the subtle levels in the physical. Like I have some nice little sleigh bells that I simply use a lot of times in meditation. I hang it up and have a string tied to it so I can just jiggle it. So it keeps making that sound. And I would like to, have talked to some of the people about doing a series of recordings just on trying to duplicate as well as possible the inner sounds or the subtle sounds, so that people can hear and understand what they are. And I have one Tibetan Buddhist chanting. It's that I've had a recording for many years, but during that recording, they're chanting these very deep resonant sounds and doing Om Mani Padme Hum in most cases. As they chant that, there's instruments used or devices used to make those sounds that you would hear in the subtle levels in between. And like when at the third eye, I know when you get there, or the throat, often sounds of clanging pieces of metal clanging together and stuff like that. And the recording from the Tibetan monks, it includes all of the different levels in there, plus the Om that you get from the third eye, or when you sit in the crown chakra, and move into that. So does that make sense? Do you understand what that is and how it works?
I had a comment about, I guess the spleen center is the one that
Mhm.
Audley talked about. And so I'm assuming that is what is on your chart here is the sacrum. And he said when we stood up erect off of all four, that the spleen moved over to the side. And the reason for that was so that we were more in balance with the planet Earth.
I know that's what he said. I have, have been concerned about that, or have explored that, I guess, in a lot of detail. And like when I talked about the chakras and stuff, and I showed that there's only a few people that have drawn the chakras, where they're not in complete alignment. And one of those is Audley, and the drawing that his is very similar to is C.W. Leadbeater from the Theosophical Society, which is one of the probably the greatest psychic, or able to see things and draw them, as he saw them. But I see that in general with people, they're more in a straight line, and it could be that they just haven't got to that level yet. But that some people, because of the way they live, they actually create different alignment in the centers. And I know I showed a drawing from a Russian guy that measures chakras and does all this stuff. And he showed chakras in some cases even outside of the physical body alignment. And he said these are all, when you get people that are very sick or ill or things like that, chakras don't line up in a straight line. And so that's one area I would love to, to spend time with a group of us together, simply going into meditation and contemplating these questions, and then trying to, do our own version of what we see, and the explanation of why it's that way. And I think, Audley gave an explanation, and that seems to work. But then when I go around and look at most people, they don't look like that. They're more in the straight line. And so, I would say for me that I have this little bucket over here on the right side that has these unresolved issues. But it's, and I, at one point, I tended to just take everything that was said and accept, okay, that's the way it is. And even get in fights a few times, or arguments about, this is the way it is. But with time, I've come to a perspective where I simply want to verify it, and I've come to see that, much of the things that I think I learned from him was more of how do I understand the kingdom and my own kingdom and what I see in others, and does it match with what the teaching is what we were given in that tradition, or is there some difference? And if there are, let's see if we can enhance it or improve it in some way.
And
Yes.
Okay, the purpose of the chakras, if my understanding is correct, is to affect states of consciousness. Okay, am I in alignment with you on that? That our chakras do allow us to change our state of consciousness. I mean, they influence our awareness of our frequency of state of awareness, like whether we're happy or sad, or whether we're seeing clearly, insightfully or not, or rather, so the purpose of the chakras, I guess, is my question, and then the second one is that purpose accomplished through the petals or through the alignment, or both?
I think it's a combination, and the real purpose, you know, as consciousness comes into form, it expresses in different ways. And you know, like one question that's over in my unresolved issues is, why does consciousness express as it does? And the only answer I've been able to find that, you know, kind of even moderately satisfies my own awareness is that somehow or another the the particles or the components or the aspects of the universe, the creation of what it is, they're like pieces in a puzzle, and they only fit together in a particular way. And if you get them all fit together in the right way, it makes this beautiful, smooth, even picture that's very easy to comprehend and understand. But as we've lived throughout time, we often distort that. And so we create imbalances, or, you know, our karmic pattern. We create desires that, you know, are sometimes like the samskaras, the very deep patterns in our mind and our nature, our tendency, they cause it to manifest or express in different ways. But when you stack them all up, you know, they create a body. And if it forms properly to the point that it can stay alive, you know, you actually, it's, you know, the body is formed, it's grown in the mother, and it comes out, and the first thing they do is whack it, and you know, when you take that first big deep breath and start crying because somebody hit you, then, you know, your centers are pretty much all there. But at the most basic level, when you're first born, there's a lot of components that haven't been developed yet. You know, the body's, first of all, is very small. You know, it's not mobile in itself. It can't feed itself. It can't take care of itself. It can't speak. It has to map the brain into the language of the local environment that it's in, and whatever language that you hear during that period of time, those pieces just fit together magically in your brain, and you start, if nothing's wrong in the brain, you start speaking that language. Usually by the time you're 2 or 3 years old, you know, start having some mastery of it. And then as you get to 5 and 6 and 7, you begin to have some understanding of what the rules of grammar are. And you magically, and this is, even some people have studied this in terms of just linguistics. And they say, you know, it's quite amazing that you can hear this jumbled up mess of sounds of people speaking to you, not teaching you, but simply speaking to you. And somehow or another, the brain sorts those out. And it doesn't just sort them out and know what the sounds are, but it begins to interact with them. And there's an underlying structure in language that has something to do with how the mind is, or how the brain is built, and the structure. And so you understand that words go in certain order. And you know, when you first start talking as a little kid, a lot of times you put the adjective in the wrong part, in the wrong place in the sentence, or different things like that. But as you spend more time around people, and hear the language more, then you know, you're able to sort it out and put the words in the right order, in the right intensity. And if it's a tonal language, you know how to make all the tones, like in Mandarin or Vietnamese, or a number of the languages around the world, they're tonal based, you know, and by varying the tone of the same, what we would call the same written sound, you get different meaning from it. English is not a tonal language. You know, words have meaning associated with them, not tied to the tone of the word. We only use tonal changes when we ask questions. We get to the end of the sentence and we raise the tone a little bit, and that's a cue to everybody that, you know, I've just asked a question. And then we, you know, to do that in writing, we put the little question mark there. But you can look at the structure of it. But all of those things are components of how we express and how the divine comes out. Why it's the way it is, that's one of the unresolved questions. But as you go deeper into it, you know, it seems to say, oh, all these pieces fit together. It's beautiful. I love it. Does that respond to your question, or?
Not as clearly as I had hoped.
Well, let's talk about it then.
Well, just the relationship between the chakra, the different chakra, you know, how the chakra functions, and consciousness at that particular level, you know,
Right.
and to what extent, you know, the nature of that, the structure of that chakra, it's rather it's functioning, firing on all cylinders, so to speak,
Yeah.
you know, and whether it's aligned correctly, you know, what's the difference? You know, if it's not in alignment, you know, how does that affect consciousness? If it is in alignment, but its petals are all, you know, twisted and or discolored, or they're not whatever, you know,
Right.
vibrating right, how does that affect it? And I would imagine that each petal, you know, would be, it, you know, could be twisted a little or a lot, and that would
Right,
have
right.
either a lot or a little effect on consciousness,
Yes.
you know. And so, like, what is, if all of the chakras, you know, were in perfect, you know, shape and functioning like a, you know, like they were ideally intended to function, which I'm not sure that there's like anybody, if that's ever possible, you know, for all of them to be, you know, in perfect shape, because isn't that where karma is kind of tied? So it's going to be related, you know, to the lessons that you have to learn.
It yeah, it is in that sense. But it's, and there are, you know, the functions of each one. Another way to think about it is perhaps is each chakra is in a sense a doorway into the realms, you know, and like certain chakras, that's a doorway into the etheric realm, into the astral realm. And one of the tables, I probably don't have it here, but I'll include it in a later lecture. It actually shows the alignment in the doorways as they relate to the various levels or levels of awareness, as we might describe them. And if they are out of alignment, you know, then yeah, you get some real distortion. What I've seen most is that when people are sick, or when they're injured, or when they're psychologically, when there's a pathology, when there's something has gone wrong in their life. Maybe it's a great deal of abuse or a great deal of trauma, you know, and seeing things that if you put most people in a situation and you make everything uncertain, you know, you basically make it not capable for them to maintain easily. Everybody has a breaking point, you know, and at that point, like in torture, they find that once you reach that breaking point, you'll tell them anything they want to hear just to stop. So they'll stop playing the loud noise, or they'll let you sleep because they've deprived you in a certain way. And like lack of sleep or lack of awareness, those all do things that distort the chakras or distort the energy field. And a lot of times they distort the perspective, the perspective that we have. They maybe even thin the energy that, like, normally chakras are sealed and there's a barrier between you and the other worlds. And if that barrier is broken, or the pedal is severely distorted and pulled to one side in a way so that the things from those realms can come into your awareness and you can go into those levels, it can be quite unpleasant. And so, you know, and that's why a lot of these mantras, when they talk about healing them, they help you seal that center. And like, I had a lot of trouble with a couple of chakras when I was with Audley. And, you know, he had me doing things like, you know, putting saran wrap. It sounds crazy, but it works quite well to help, you know, when the seal is broken, it helps to like put a bandage over it and heal it. And he would do mantra, he would put energy in it, and then he would say, you know, put the saran wrap. And, you know, for a while, a few years there, I was quite crinkly. You know, it's just like I'd wrap it around my body, and I'd even put a picture of him facing out and one facing in, you know, because those doorways were so open that it was a challenge for me. And then with time, you know, those begin to seal and heal better. But if you don't correct those misalignments or those petals and things, you know, it continues to grow, and you can say, yeah, it's karmic, a karmic expression. Hopefully, you know, you can work through the karma. You know, we talk about, you know, cleaning it or clearing it or burning it up or doing various things in any kind of way to get through it. But that's how we process information in this form.
And so
In a
Kriya can
simplistic,
help, Kriya can
may I?
help with that too, right? With
Yes.
the cleansing of the sealing and the cleansing of the chakra, the energy that the Kriya.
Yeah, it does. But what I found with the Kriya, it seems to like in the little firebender video that you shared, he talked about, life happens and stuff falls in the stream and it blocks up, and that's karmic. That's our problem. And a lot of times the karma is our way of thinking about it. Like either there's what are you afraid of? What do you feel grief about? What do you feel shame about? All those are issues tied to a center not functioning properly. And, you can go through therapy, you can go through meditation, you can go through a healing. And there's, people that just specialize in healing the chakra, doing body work, doing manipulations of the body. Maybe it's just, adjusting the spine, doing those things. But all those are very powerful effects on the body. And you can do it. Like it's hard to do some of the things without a therapist that can do spiritual work also. They can be very helpful. Sometimes just a therapist can give us insight, and we can change the mind in some way. Like one form of therapy I particularly like it's called the EMDR. I think I referenced that before, and I know Mary in particular, Mary Skidmore, and there are others, from the center that were trained in that at various points. But that's a very effective way to break up a blockage in the body. And it's a very, very simple technique. And that's what I'm always amazed is some of these techniques are so simple that someone can utilize them and can actually teach others and train them. And they have none of the inner awareness at all. You don't have to. You simply know how the brain works, how it encodes and incorporates information or integrates it into the body. And then you can change those or correct it. So lots of different ways to do it. And all of them affect the chakra and how it expresses.
May I
Yes.
expand that question too?
Yes.
That distortion or imperfection in the chakras, isn't it in a simple way like the timing belt of a car engine? Unless it's perfectly tuned, the performance will suffer.
Perfect analogy. Excellent.
Okay.
Excellent way to look at it.
And you don't have really to understand how the timing belt works,
right?
As long as there are ways to fix it, and
Yes.
and that's where sickness comes. I mean,
Yeah.
there is a distortion.
Correct.
That's why we go to the Elohim for healing.
Yes.
And I'm going from my own family's experience. My father suffered from Alzheimer's before he passed. And for the past, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No problem.
There was a call coming in. For the past 2 years of his life, he was not there. He was not present.
Yes.
It turns out he has parked in a place in the service part of the kingdom where there are crystal pyramids that take the light and they break it down to colors and they give you wonderful healing or alignment.
Right.
And that's what I'm trying to say is you don't need to have the scientific knowledge of how things work if they do work. If there's a place and you go, you take it to the car mechanic, in this case, in this particular level,
Right.
and they fix you.
Yes. And there are lots of people that can work with the mind, which directly works with the chakras, or work with the body to make adjustments, to tweak it, like, adjusting the timing belt, or that's one component, adjusting the fuel mixture. There's a lot of things that can be done, and there, a lot of these are techniques or technical. A good technician can help you through these, and it's like a good therapist. They know, oh, you do this, this, and this, or like in the EMDR therapy, they simply observe your eyes, and they find that when you talk about things that happened in your life, the eyes will fix at some point, and they'll lock, and when they lock, you can't go on, and so it's directly tied to some level in the body. And then when the therapist notices that the eyes lock, then they say, well, follow the movement of my finger. And they move it back and forth in your visual field for a number of times. And that process simply breaks up or integrates that energy that's tied to that level. It integrates that in such a way that all of a sudden it's like moving the trash out of the stream so that the energy flows again. And the person feels much better, and then they're no longer dominated by that point where it locks. it doesn't occupy their whole consciousness.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I'll move on. Some of the texts that I found most helpful, the Mantram Handbook, Eknath Eswaran, and it's available on Audible. All of these are Audible, since they're mantra in particular are referenced. They're good sources to do that. Eknath Eswaran, he was a teacher, came from India, Fulbright scholarship, and to Berkeley, and ended up teaching English literature. And some of his text on the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and his translation and commentary are some of the best in the world. So I always encourage people to follow those. Because he has such a skill and mastery of Sanskrit, of the native languages that he spoke in India, and also English. He's able to do things and bring the knowledge in a way that not only sounds very beautiful, but it adds understanding, and he's using speech like Audley, from a very high level, so that it talks to the soul. It doesn't, just talk to the, words on the page kind of stuff. And then this Thomas Ashley Farran, the mantra Sacred Words of Power. That's an excellent, these are audio only programs. There is a nice commentary or PDF file that goes with those, and they have a lot of very useful information. And he's one of the better teachers I found for learning mantra, and he has just a wealth of knowledge about the mantra and how they work. And then the other mantra yoga, the primal sound secrets that I referred to earlier, David Farley, excellent teachers. And if you don't have a mastery of Sanskrit and source material, their translations are as good as I found, and they're very very good at doing those in English. And then Mala Magic, it's a nice little book about the Rudraksha beads, and has a lot of information there. So I recommend those to people. And then what did I do? I think and then the key parts of using mantra and samyama, it's a term you'll often hear if you get into too much of the Kriya stuff. But Patanjali writes and this is in the Yoga Sutras, that the siddhis or the powers that come with the meditation, like as you meditate, as you do mantra, it has an effect on the body as it's tuned up. Powers or increased awareness at different levels begin to manifest. And it's ironic that there's the 24 that's or 25 that's of creation, and there's the same number of symbols in the Sanskrit alphabet that are tied to all of those. And then also the powers that there's about the same number of powers that tend to manifest in people as they begin to meditate. But as you do the mantra, it's very useful to improve your concentration. It will definitely deepen the meditation, and you can get samadhi at will, where you can enter those states. And the ability to have sustained consciousness, it's in that context, it means highly focused, unwavering, deeply absorbed in a meditative state, as opposed to obsessive mental chattering. And even if you're doing mantra, if you're fearful and frantic and, chanting it and not stilling the mind, it can actually increase the difficulty that you're having rather than subdue it or calm it. And so it's a very useful perspective to go on. And then the mantras that I like and have done a lot of work with, the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra. And I'm not sure, it's just like, I did not know that mantra until I met Audley, and I don't remember it really being so much as a part of his teaching and stuff. But at one point he said, oh, you should do this. You'd probably really like it. And so I started doing it, while I was driving around Oklahoma City. At one point I was in a service position. And so I basically went from location to location and fixed stuff. And so I had, easily a couple hours on the road every day as I would go places, and then I would finish my work and I'd go see him. But I started doing this mantra, and one day driving down Northwest 10th in Oklahoma City, somewhere past Classen Boulevard as I was doing it, it had an effect and changed my whole consciousness, and the world turned into this beautiful golden light, and it reminded me a little bit of when I later saw the movie The Matrix, how everything kind of transformed into a very beautiful flowing world and color and awareness. And it became to a point where it was overwhelming to me. I simply pulled over and went into a deep meditation, and could really appreciate that golden light. And I'll send these slides out that you can include them, but there's a nice explanation of the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra by the Dalai Lama in the link here. And that might be of use to some. Another mantra that I have used before in this is Asato Ma Sadgayama, and it translates into Om, lead us from unreality to reality, lead us from the darkness to the light, lead us from the fear of death to the knowledge of immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. A very beautiful mantra to start your meditation. There's a link here for the Ravi Shankar George Harrison version, and there's a lot of versions. I know I talked to someone the other day, and I think Tina Turner even did a version of this that's quite beautiful, and many of the other people that do mantra and chant a lot are there. And then the mantras for meditation, the Gayatri mantra, that's probably, one of my all-time favorites, and I encourage people to do that. It will heal, it will transform consciousness, it will correct centers, but it's the sort of thing that to do it 108 times takes about 45 minutes at the pace I do it, 47 minutes, something like that. And you can start off, if you don't know the mantra, by listening to it, and then just repeating it, singing it as I sing it. After you spend maybe your auditory processing works very well, it may not take you long to learn it. For mine, I have some issues with dyslexia, which has to do with how I hear sound. And so I will have to do those over and over many, many times. And it takes me usually a few weeks of doing them every day for an hour or two to learn one of these mantras that are longer. And I'll have a little more detail on that. And then the Maha Mrityunjaya mantra, another very powerful healing mantra and liberation mantra. And then the Om Namah Shivaya. I know we did that a lot in the Lotus Center, and that was one that helped me a great deal as I was having some real challenges in my own life. That was unbelievably helpful. And the Gayatri, this is the Om Bhurvasa Tat Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Deva Sadi Mahi Diyo Yo Na Prachodaya. It actually comes from the Rig Veda. Is where it's first seen, and it, O thou existence absolute, creator of the three dimensions, we contemplate upon the divine light. May he stimulate our intellect and bestow upon us true knowledge. And that mantra, let me see if we can open that. I'll play just a short segment of it that you can get a sense
Savitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya
धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्. I think that gives you a sense, for the sound. And if you're not familiar with that mantra, it probably doesn't sound, it sounds like a bunch of noise, and it takes time to learn it, but I would encourage everyone to learn that and do it as much as they can. It's considered kind of the mother of all mantras. It's referenced as the supreme mantra in the Bhagavad Gita and many other places. And it's one that once you learn it and begin to master it, it can heal the body, it can change the mind, the chakras, and can kind of transform you in a very interesting way. Any comments on that? Left them speechless. No.
There is a really great version of it. Let me see if I can, that I really like. Cynthia Snodgrass is one of the names.
Yeah,
She
I'm
really
familiar with her.
beautiful. Does that particular song. I think that's lovely.
Yeah. I like her work. The one, this is the one that I showed, I think is Pandit Josh Raj, and he's one of the most famous singers or vocalists from India, and he's very old now. I don't know if he's still alive, but they did studio level recordings for many of these, and he spent a lifetime studying these and practicing them, and some of the people, like, you can tell if they chant the mantra for literally hundreds of thousands of times, it has a transformative effect on them, but you can hear it in their voice. And any of the people that do the kirtan circuit, like Krishna Das or Deva Brahmal and Mitten and several of the people there that I know and have been to their stuff, they really have a very resonant tone that comes, it speaks from the heart. As they do mantra more and more, it changes the flow of air through the body and how they breathe. It changes the vocal structure, it changes the brain, and it really becomes much more powerful. And so if you want to learn the mantra, I'd say find someone that's a voice that's harmonious with your nature, and it's pretty easy to chant along with it and to learn the mantra, and then you can experience the effect. But it's something that just saying it a few times, it's not that kind of magic. You say it a few 100,000 times and you're transformed, and it really opens the mind. And some of the things that you begin to see, just like as you meditate or spend time with a teacher, all of a sudden you begin to understand the scriptures and they reveal themselves to you. You have that inner speech, that inner knowing, that inner knowledge from the highest level of awareness, and it can be very comforting.
And I assume that transformation is slow and gradual, or is there like a quantum leap, or both?
It's I think it's probably both. I know it begins to slowly happen, but at one point I noticed that after months of doing this mantra, an hour or two a day, I could tell in my own voice that there was a difference. And another thing it talks about, there is a commentary on that particular album or that CD that gives an explanation of it. And it says some of the things that mantra is very useful for is it produces revealed knowledge. It helps you to do that, but it also changes the way that you look at the world. It changes the voice and you begin to hear that. And it's very subtle, but then when you begin to see it and experience it, it becomes very comforting, at least for me, to where it's just like, oh, to do that, it really helps a great deal. And somebody else asked a question or started.
Ben, I did. I was wondering if there was something significant or special about the use of Sanskrit in the chants.
Yeah, very much. And the Sanskrit language is often defined as the language of the gods. And there's a couple of languages in the world that were developed more from the spiritual tradition rather than just communication perspective. But in Sanskrit, a lot of the tones or the syllables, the sounds, and everything, because they're associated with all of the chakras, and it's like there's a particular sound for each center. Like if you want to chant Om all the time, the third eye and the crown chakra, those are the ones that they stimulate. And chanting those, or the Western more tradition, Christian tradition, Amen. And actually we, just like in this mantra, it starts with Om, it always ends with Om when it's stating, and it's just like in a prayer in the Christian tradition, it'll end with Amen, saying it's a reference to that sound. But as you use that tone or that sound, it actually stimulates or vibrates the chakras or the centers, the petals, and that's the power of it. Where if you try to do this in English, English is a harsh language in a sense, or you think English is bad, try to do it in German, and it really gets, kind of chopped up. And like in German, I think the word for butterfly, which is kind of a beautiful word in English, probably derived from the French, but in German, it's Schmetterling, it's, and so, each one has it, but the languages that seem to have the greatest ties into the spiritual traditions are Hebrew and the Sanskrit, and then some of the ancient Greek. I've played with that. I have a real fascination for Greece and the history there, but I found that those languages in particular can be very helpful, and because they resonate with parts of your being, and so that's why it's best to do it in Sanskrit.
I have one.
Go ahead.
Well, I didn't know if somebody else was trying to talk too, but I just have one other comment. My observation and my experience with the Kundalini yoga.
Right.
I've never been interested in their practice and their yoga practice, but their inner tradition is very devoted to the sound current, and their musicians are fabulous, especially the women for whatever reason. But they have the ability to pull you deep, deep inside. So
yeah, very much. So you must like what is it, Sanat Kaur? I think is her name. There's
several of them, but yeah, there's one of them's actually won just regular awards like Emmys and things like that, Grammys.
Right.
That good, but she has crossed over into the regular popular music.
Yeah, no, there's quite a bit. In fact, I have a version of Om Mani Padme Hum that was on the Chinese Idol show, like American Idol, and one of a Tibetan lady, that chants that, and it's fully commercialized, and you find it everywhere now, and I've got some samples that we may get to. And did somebody else have a question?
Yes, Ben. Well, it's more of a comment. I enjoy most of the mantras you presented. Another one I have used a lot with great effect is for one, Namyo Horenge Kyo.
Yes.
I don't know if you're familiar with that. I find it very, very effective in breaking up the thought process and getting you into the place you want to be.
Yes. I haven't worked as much with that, but I am familiar with it, and I would agree with what you're saying. It does have that effect.
And another beautiful one is the mantra of, let me try that, Avalokiteshvara. It is the bodhisattva of compassion.
Right.
If nothing else is beautiful, and you can get lost in the beauty of it.
Boy, that's
and to break up with tradition, try Agni Parthene. That's in Greek.
Yes.
It's a hymn. It's a mantra. It's a tribute more than anything else to Virgin Mary.
Yes.
And I have not found a better one for devotion.
Excellent.
That's it.
Okay. No, that's good input. And another Greek one that I know you hear a lot is the Kyrie eleison. That's been popularized by a long time, and I think that also comes from the Greek, if I understand it properly.
Yes, Lord have mercy.
Yes, yes, yes. And those and some of the Latin mantra or chant or that's done, those I find helpful, but not quite as much as the Sanskrit. It's just like my nature is a little more resonant with those.
Correct. Like you said, Sanskrit is the language of the god.
Yes.
It was based on the sound that will trigger the effect. How
Yes.
can you do better than that?
Yeah. And well, the Hebrew is done a little bit in the same way in the Kabbalah. They tie the Hebrew alphabet to it just as they do the Sanskrit alphabet in the whole teaching. And so it can be very powerful. But I've never been as drawn to that as to the Indian or the Sanskrit traditions.
True. And ancient Greek, as you mentioned, was much more spiritual. In the process of modernization and simplification, a lot of that spirit was lost.
Yeah, I agree. And we translated it into English, and so it didn't know.
Oh my God.
That's part of it. This mantra, the Mahamrityunjaya mantra, it's really a mantra to Lord Shiva, but the meaning of it there, we worship Shiva, the three-eyed Lord, who is fragrant and nourishes and grows all beings. As the ripened cucumber is automatically liberated, or the ripe fruit will drop from the vine, from its bondage to the creeper. When it's fully ripe, may he liberate, or moksha, liberate us from death for the sake of immortality. And that's another one that's often done for healing, but it's a very powerful mantra. I know a lot of times if I'll do mantra, if I have a friend who's sick or ill, I'll often contemplate their picture and do this mantra, and do that for a while as a form of prayer. And because of time, I won't go into it. But it's very good. And then the Om Namah Shivaya, I like Krishna Das's version of it. I like Swami Muktananda, the chants that we did at the retreats and stuff. I found that extremely helpful. Another one that's very useful for if you're starting any new venture, starting any area where there may be problems, it's the Om Gam Ganapate Namaha, the Ganesha mantra. And it's used by devotees to offer prayers to Lord Ganesha, seeking his blessing and help. People use the mantra when they're ready for a new beginning or to get involved in something new. This can be anything: a new job, a new relationship, a business deal, or something simple like beginning a new day. And I found this is particularly helpful. I think Deva Pramal, I think this is the YouTube link to one of hers, but she has a version of it on mantra for challenging times or things like that. And I encourage people to do that, especially if you seem to be at a point where there's blockages or you don't know the way to go or the direction. This mantra can be extremely very helpful, to resolve that and calm the mind and do it. And for some reason, doing this one, it always makes me feel good. Let me see, how are we at time? Let me see if we can see which one. Yeah.
Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha.
That one give you a little flavor of it, but it's really uh, quite helpful for me in lots of ways. And then there's a mantra that you were talking about, some of the Buddhist mantras, and I thought this one is kind of where I would end. But its mantra has come full, I guess, full swing or full turn in the Western culture in particular. I think it's commercialized to a point that it's quite amazing. You find kirtans available in most major cities in the U.S. and on live, like Krishna Das. I get a reminder every 2 or 3 days he's live somewhere. And if you have not gone and seen some of these enchanted with them, it does seem to increase the power of the mantra when you chant as a group, and it can be quite healing and transformative, but just a lot of fun. But this one is done a little more in the tradition. We'll see about this one, but this is kind of the ultimate in terms of where it's come to in terms of commercialization, but also very beautiful. We'll play this for a second.
Satu samaya manupalaya beda satu tenopadi taridro me bawa sunto kayo me bawa supokayo me bawa anurato me bawa sarva siddhi me prayatsa sarva karma sunsame sitam shiriya kuruhum ha ha ho bhagave sarvata thagata benza ma me menza benzi bawa maha samaya satu. Satu samaya manupalaya beda satu tenopati taridro me bawa sunto kayo me bawa supokayo me bawa anurato me bawa sarva siddhi me prayatsa sarva karma sunsame sitam shiriya kuruhum ha ha ho bhagave sarvata thagata benza ma me menza benzi bawa maha samaya satu. Me bawa supokayo me bawa.
That's done in more of the tradition of the Vietnamese community. She's a Vietnamese singer, actually European, but they really do a lot of. She's quite known on YouTube and has a number of mantras. A lot of the chanting is done much faster, and it's clearly more energizing. But it's beautiful prayers in ways. And like this in particular is a mantra to remove negative energy. And these are typical, which I found kind of interesting, is that a lot of the mantra that she does is more Tibetan in source material than it is in terms of the more traditional Vietnamese chanting. And the mantras that are done there, there's one that's, I would say it's similar to Om Mani Padme Hum in Vietnamese, but it's Namo A Di Đà Phật. And that one is done kind of in the same style, but if you go to a Vietnamese temple, that's the mantra that's often heard all the time. And it's quite fun. And when the Vietnamese that I know, when they learned I really like mantra and like temples, all the times I've been in Vietnam, anytime they see a temple, they stop because they think that's what I would like to do. And so I get to hear lots of different versions of it, but a lot of really very beautiful mantra. And that's kind of, I think, time-wise, we've taken it, I guess, past where I thought we'd be. But that's kind of an overview on mantra and how it can be helpful. I encourage people to practice. It's something that's fun. You have some mantra going on in your mind all the time anyway, and so you might as well do one that tunes the body up like adjust the timing belt while you're driving, and or while you're walking, or while you're preparing for your meditation. And one key thing is, as you go deeper and deeper into the meditation, at some point you have to let go of everything, including the mantra. And the in the Yoga Sutras, it talks about levels of samadhi or awareness as you move in, and how to get there. And there's samadhi with a seed of some type, either an image or a sound that you follow, or the image of the teacher, or an image of a symbol of the Om, various things that people concentrate on. But as you move deeper and deeper into those, the image dissolves. If you hold on to those, to the image or the sound, you never end up in the oneness, the full oneness of yourself. And so mantra can be very powerful. And then from the concentration perspective, remember the guru, read a little, meditate more, love God all the time with all your heart. That was a quote from Yogananda. And then don't believe a word I say. If you believe me, you'd believe any damn fool. Audley Allison. And then truly you can only see yourself. So however you react in the world, if it bothers you, it's something you need to work on. If you find it has no effect, it's something you've mastered, and it's something that you may be able to, if it makes you feel good, it's probably a skill or a talent that you've developed in your life. And know the self, do what makes your soul happy. That's the key thing. And then from the concentration perspective, one of the things, and I've tried to find ways to incorporate this in I guess a screen or a drawing or a slide. And one of the things I found is that, Audley often had us concentrating in the early days. I don't know why he had me do a lot of work with candles, and this in particular. But if you take an image of two items and you cross the eyes slightly, and you'll find that a third image will form. So usually it starts with four images. You see the two, and then you see what's there. But as you bring the eyes into alignment, the center, an image forms in the center, and you can begin to concentrate on that. And I find that if I go into this type of concentration technique, it's probably one that looks kind of weird with your eyes crossed, but it's very useful. I like candles, and they help a great deal for me. There's some others that, and I have some that had more of the swirling designs, but if you take designs like this that have some movement in them, and you cross the eyes until a third image forms, you can notice that third image on the screen actually begins, there's a pulsation that happens at the center of the image. It's very useful for doing the mantra and pulsating with that. And it helps you, this helps to develop concentration, develop the inner sight, develop the awareness, but most importantly, it helps you to focus the mind. And so it's very powerful. And then I was just playing around with it, and I found when I did three of them, somehow or another, I get four images on the screen, and two of them are formed. But it's an interesting experience that I found helpful for some types of concentration. And then this is an image that comes out of, it's an adaptation of one of Sri Yukteswar's tables that talks about the yugas. But I found I can take any type of image, and if I cross the eyes and focus, and once I cross the eyes and begin to concentrate, you can actually go in and read on the third image. You can read the detail in it. So again, another tool that helps with concentration and focus, which are critical, and helps in doing the mantra. And then I like the Sri Yantra. I think I posted this a while back. One of my friends in Italy, I think, had posted this. But you can do this, or the lotus center symbol and the emblem that Audley produced. Do that. So you can use whatever's around you, any of the drawings that we have, the images that we have. And if you cross the eyes and look at the center image, it has a tendency to kind of come alive and float in space. And I find it quite useful. And if you want these, I'll include those in the slide deck, and lots of different versions of that. You can do the same with the drawings of the kingdom. But you can use any tool that you have around you to help you explore what's going on in consciousness. And I think that's pretty much what I had intended to cover today. It took a little more time than I had hoped, but hopefully it's useful to somebody.